full-blown preparation and practices for BYU. I can tell you when we started, our players had a couple days off. They had worked in the weight room, but there were some guys that were beat up after the last game against San Diego State, and I think Coach Long would probably say the same thing. I mean, it was a hard-fought game. We came up on the short end of the stick. We were disappointed, but moving forward, I can't tell you, our players and coaches are really excited about playing BYU in the Poinsettia Bowl game. Everything that I've always heard about BYU has been bared out on the tape that we've watched. I mean, they're a big physical, disciplined football team, and so we're really excited about the game. We've had some mixing up of physical practices, and then some practices where we've just insulated or started to install the game plan with BYU. And, we'll finish out this week. We'll depart on Saturday, and we plan on having a practice as soon as we get to San Diego. In reference to BYU, as I said earlier, I think they're an excellent football team. Coach Satake has done a great job. I know it's his first time being a head football coach, but he's a seasoned, experienced coach. And you see their team getting better during the course of the year, particularly the last 4 games. They did lose their quarterback against Utah State, but Magnum is, we think, an excellent quarterback. He played a lot a while ago and really a good thrower. And so they've got a physical offensive line, big and strong. Williams is an excellent running back. And on defense, they just play a whole host of players, particularly up front. I mean, you'll see tons of different guys coming in at all kinds of times of the game, so they have an awful lot of depth. And they're only giving up 19 points a game, so they're one of the top defenses we'll face this year. So a lot on the line, an exciting time for Cowboy football, and we're really looking forward to playing the ball game. So at this time, open it up to questions.
Craig, you mentioned you were kind of beat up. It looks like on your depth chart everyone's available. Do you expect to have everyone available? Is there anyone that's a little iffy at this point, even though we're a week away from the game?
Gavin Rush would be the only guy that we think we're a little concerned. He's got some back issues right now. We believe it's soft tissues issues. So we're still a ways away, but we anticipate he'll be back. But outside of that, no, we came through the game with a lot of bumps and bruises, but I think we'll have everybody at full strength.
Coach, you mentioned they're changing quarterbacks. I know Taysom Hill is a little bit more mobile of a guy than Mangum. Does that kind of change what they do on offense, and how tricky is that to prepare for a different guy?
Well, anytime you put a different quarterback in, you're going to have a different flavor. Most of the time, 2 guys aren't going to be identical. Hill was a really prolific runner and passer. Mangum's got good mobility, but the tape we've watched, I think he's an excellent passer. And so it's not like we're going to disregard his ability to run, but I do think he's got he's completing the ball over 60%. They've got a couple great receivers. Pearson and Kurtz are good receivers, and so we'll need to defend the pass, especially.
Craig, Cash got the start against San Diego State last week. Looks like he's starting again. What did you see from film? I know he's been very good for you on special teams. It looked like from a distance he more than held his own. What did you like about him, and what do you like about him going forward now?
Well, on a big stage like that, it wasn't like he was intimidated. He made some plays. He was assignment bound. It wasn't like he busted a lot of assignments. He's got strong physical guy, and we're really pleased with him being able to go out and play. And so this will be another opportunity for him to play against a great opponent.
Craig, this used to be, as you know, a hot rivalry between these two schools, but there's been, a number of years that have passed before these two teams have played again coming up in this game. Are you guys as a coaching staff doing anything to kind of reconnect with the current players in terms of what this rivalry used to mean? Are you educating them on that process, maybe calling in some players that used to play here to talk with them about the history of this rivalry between these two schools?
Well, we've been, I tell you, quite frankly, and I'm sure BYU's been in the same boat. I mean, we've been trying to mix recruiting and bowl preparations, so we're well aware of the long history of the two teams playing, but we've not had anybody in yet. I would venture to say when we get to San Diego, we're going to have a lot of our former players around. I was been well versed as far as the tough physical games that we've had, but we've not staged anything like that thus far.
Coach, just talk a little bit about the delicate balance this week of preparing for this game, but also handling finals and wrapping up the semester, because I know you want to have these guys concentrate on their academics.
There's no doubt school is really important, and we've tracked the schedules. There have been some players who've missed some practices because of testing conflicts, and also we've been mindful to make sure that we end practices fairly early to get them a chance to get home and do some studying and get a good night's rest.
Coach, BYU statistically has one of the best run defenses in the country. What have you seen just from them that they do well in that area of the defense?
Well, when I talked about them being physical and disciplined, that starts up front. And they play a lot of guys, so they're fresh. It's not like you see a defense that gets worn down during the course of the game. They're always integrating different guys during the course at any time. And so big, strong, imposing front. Their gap sound. Very rarely do you see guys playing undisciplined, and they make you earn it. And so when you have a physical, disciplined team, that's always a challenge, and that's going to be a challenge for us as far as moving the football both on the ground and in there. But their rushing yardage has been outstanding. I think the last 4 games, I was reading a statistic they would be number 1 in the country, and so that's going to be a real challenge for our offense to be able to move the ball on the ground.
You have said that at the beginning of the season you knew their team would be better, but in your wildest dreams at the start of the season, did you think you'd be sitting here talking about a bowl game next week?
Our players really set a goal to be in a bowl game at the beginning of the year. I know a lot of teams in our league certainly do. It became apparent to me about halfway through the year that we had the makings of being a team that could challenge for the conference championship, which we did. And so did we exceed expectations? Yeah, I think we did exceed expectations. We exceeded my expectations. I felt like we could be a bowl-eligible football team, but to be out here in War Memorial Stadium and come within 3 points of winning everything, that's probably exceeded my expectation. But I think it gives us an indication where we can go in the future.
Craig, sometimes there's unpredictability when you get to bowl season. Some of it, I guess, having to do with the fact that you've been in a rhythm all year long up until this point. Now you've got a lull. You get the guys back in practice. As a coach and as a coaching staff, is that a concern, and how do you address that moving from the end of the season, some time off, and now going into a bowl game?
Well, that's a good question. Experience has helped. For me, a lot of those years when I was at Nebraska, sometimes we'd have a significant gap. And what you need to be able to do is keep your players engaged. We've had some practices where they have not been real physical practices, but we've got our guys moving around. I think you can prepare to the point where your players are stale and they don't perform particularly well in bowl games. And so we believe we've struck the right balance thus far. When you get to the bowl site, I know there's always all kinds of activities that are going on, and so there's a balance there to make sure your players are enjoying the bowl experience and yet stay focused on the football game. You certainly don't want to take your football team and beat them up before you get in the game. And so I think we're on the right track, and we've struck the right balance right now, and it's going to be important that you play one time, and that's going to be against BYU several days away.
Greg, I know before the championship game you said, Sydney was going to be functionable, and he gets an interception and played quite a few snaps. Just how big of a welcome was that to get him back and build some depth, and do you expect him to continue to improve and be a little even more functional, I guess, as you get into the bowl game?
We think he will be. He's been able to practice more, Robert. He's taken more repetition. And I think how I described him going into San Diego State was functional. We could rep him some, and then he was able to pick off the pass, and it was a huge play in the ball game. We anticipate he'll play a more meaningful role in this game as opposed to just being an emergency or backup guy. I think you'll see him integrated in the game pretty early.
Greg, I'm curious your thoughts on Logan Wilson and kind of his evolution as a linebacker this year, and how neat is it to see a kid like that get rewarded on how he got rewarded Sunday?
Well, it's great to see him, be selected, I believe, as a freshman All-American. And, his performance during this year certainly would note that he'd be nominated, and it was great that some people out there selected him. He has made a great strides throughout the year as far as his understanding, his play. He's always been aggressive, but it's not by chance you've seen him interceptions, fumble recovery, strips, tackles. He's an excellent tackler, and so we think there's a real huge upside for him. It's great to see him garner some national recognition, and I think particularly a guy from the state of Wyoming, he's a good player out in Natrona County. It's always heartwarming to see one of our home state players do well and receive that kind of recognition.
Coach, not the outcome that you wanted in the conference, but you beat Boise State, a ranked team, and then you go on to beat San Diego State later in the season. How would you wrap up this season in your words? And then also, how do you make sure that this program goes up from here?
Well, you never want to be complacent. Certainly the 2 wins that you talked about were high marks. I mean, it was great, and we garnered a lot of national exposure. And I thought we played a competitive game against San Diego State in the conference championship. It was going to be tough to beat a team twice. The fact that we had them home was great. I think what's going to be important is our players now have gotten a taste of what success is like, and it's going to be important that they continue to recognize the steps that they took to put ourselves in this position and to achieve higher recognition next year. And how we finish off this year is really going to be important. When you look, I think it's a classic matchup. When you go through the bowl game matchups, I think that one stands out. Wyoming against BYU, it's going to garner a lot of national recognition, and so it's going to be a great opportunity for us to play a team that we used to play for a lot of years and on a big stage.
Craig, the last time you were together with all of us was after the Mountain West Conference Championship game until now, so I'm just wondering if you can comment maybe how you feel in the days after you signed the contract extension, what that means to you, what you've been thinking about since that time, if you can talk a little bit about that.
Coaches always, we choose to live in the present. I really appreciated the fact that that contract was signed and done before the game, simply because you wanted to go in with an attitude of, we're going to lay roots down here, and I think it's had a significant impact in recruiting. I can't talk about the specifics of the impact of that, but stability certainly has come into play. I know several of our players, a couple of them came up and said, "Hey, Coach, are you going to be around?" And that was before the contract was signed. It's a commitment by me, and it's a commitment by this university to keep our program moving forward. In today of college football, there's a lot of instability, and quite frankly, I think that's been one of the challenges that Cowboy football has faced. A cycle of either coaches always wanting to move on or shuffling a new coach in. And so I think it's a real statement for us to have continuity and stability. And it gives me a real sense going into young men's homes and saying, I'm going to be your coach, and then getting ready for a BYU game. You don't have that in the back of your mind. You're really focused, on this team and recruiting as well.
Coach, can you talk about the extra weeks that you have, and not only with your major players, but younger players that get more reps at practice, and how that will propel you guys forward?
That's always a benefit as you go into a bowl game, and we've worked some practice times where we segmented certain parts of practice just to work on future players, and they've enjoyed that because many of those young men serve as scout team players, and so for them to be able to get coached on techniques that we're actually going to do is certainly helpful. And then for our older players, all those repetitions that they're getting now in practice and the extra time in the weight room, those things can position you forward as far as moving the program to a higher level. I do think that there's a balance that you have to take. I mean, a bowl game is a reward. It's not a penalty trip. And so there needs to be some enjoyment, and certainly some of the activities that we have in San Diego we appreciate, and we'll strike the right balance there. But our preparations and our practices have been pretty robust, and the guys have really gotten after it out there.
Coach, as someone who came from previously coaching at the FCS level, where obviously they don't do the whole bowl thing, how much do you draw on your past experience as an assistant with FBS schools, or do you kind of maybe almost approach it like that playoff scenario as you had that at SDSU?
You know, it's really not. The FCS playoffs. That's like the NFL. You're the next week up. Now there was always a break between the semifinal and the championship game. But for me, I've really relied more on the experience that I had at Nebraska through, all the different bowl games and how you blend in recruiting. Because what I do think is imperative is that the next future crop for the next couple of years is going to be dependent on what kind of guys we bring in. I know good players make a good coach, and so to strike a balance between recruiting and preparation. Certainly the years that I spent with Tom Osborne certainly have helped.
Greg, Hollister becomes an all-conference tight end. I know he even told me before that was one of his goals is to be that. And what have you seen as far as his progress goes to enable to get to that level? I know probably, quarterback getting the ball certainly helps, but what have you seen from him, in his progression up until now to be an all-conference player?
I think a lot of it started in the summer workouts. He was a true team leader. He spent a great deal of time in the weight room. He became more explosive. Certainly that helped him in the running game, and then also he became more explosive coming in and out of his routes. And so getting him the football, having a quarterback that can get him the football, integrating our tight ends into the system. I think now you're beginning to see what we like to do with tight ends, and so we've been able to highlight his skills. But he paid a great, not a price, but he worked really hard this summer, put him in position. Coach Dennison said that. He goes, he's got a different look in his eye. He came back with a really mature attitude, and he was selected as one of our captains. And so he's done a great job leading, but his performance really has been one of those guys that has elevated us. It's always been my experience when you have your seniors play really well, Chase Roulier, Jake, Tanner Gentry, Jake Mulhar, when your seniors don't get senioritis, but they play their best year, typically that translates into a really good year, which we've had.